The 1960s was a decade that transformed America. But beyond the Beatles, the space race, and political upheaval, everyday life had some truly bizarre quirks that seem wild by today's standards. From the foods people ate to the safety practices they accepted as normal, the decade was full of head-scratching moments. Kids grew up eating TV dinners and drinking Tang because astronauts drank it, while families built fallout shelters in their backyards, convinced nuclear war was imminent. People smoked everywhere, in restaurants, hospitals, even airplanes, without a second thought. Cars lacked seatbelts, milk was delivered to your doorstep, and encyclopedias were the go-to source for knowledge before the internet. Fashion and home life had their own oddities too, from pantyhose replacing garters to collecting S&H green stamps like currency. These strange customs paint a vivid picture of 1960s America, a time both fascinating and hilarious through the lens of modern hindsight. Fallout shelter fever. During the height of the Cold War in the early 1960s, Americans were gripped by an intense fear of nuclear attack, sparking one of the strangest home improvement trends in history: fallout shelters. Families across the country dug underground bunkers in their backyards, stocking them with canned goods, water, and supplies to survive a nuclear blast. This wasn't just a fringe movement. Millions of Americans believed a bomb shelter was essential. The government encouraged the trend, distributing pamphlets with detailed instructions for building your own shelter. Some were surprisingly elaborate, complete with ventilation systems, beds, and even entertainment to pass the time during radiation exposure. Now, hardware stores sold kits, and specialized companies built custom bunkers for wealthy families willing to spend thousands on luxury survival spaces. Fear extended to social interactions too. Neighbors debated whether they would let others into their shelters in an emergency, and some even discussed arming themselves to protect their families. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 heightened the anxiety, making the threat of nuclear war feel real. Most fallout shelters were never used, yet many still exist, buried in backyards across America. Some have been repurposed as storage spaces or wine cellars, serving as eerie reminders of a time when Americans genuinely believed survival might mean living underground. The Great Pantyhose Revolution. 1964 changed women's fashion forever with the introduction of pantyhose, a development that seems ordinary now, but was revolutionary at the time. Before pantyhose, women wore stockings held up with garter belts, a cumbersome system that required constant adjustment and often led to embarrassing slips or runs. Pantyhose eliminated all that hassle, staying up on their own and providing far greater comfort. The timing couldn't have been better. The mid-60s saw the rise of miniskirts, and wearing stockings with visible garters was decidedly unfashionable. Pantyhose allowed women to embrace shorter skirts without worrying about undergarments showing. The impact was immediate. By 1969, Americans were buying nearly 700 million pairs of pantyhose annually, a testament to how quickly women adopted the new hosiery. Of course, pantyhose weren't perfect. They tore easily, and a single snag could ruin an entire pair, leading women to keep extras in purses or desks, and even dab clear nail polish to stop runs from spreading. The hosiery revolution also fueled a new wave of advertising, with magazines promising slimmer, sun-kissed, and flawless-looking legs. In the 60s, pantyhose were essential, whether for work, social outings, or a night on the town. They weren't just a clothing item. They were a symbol of modernity, convenience, and style, forever changing the way women dressed. TV dinners were fancy. Believe it or not, TV dinners were considered quite fancy when they became popular in the early 1960s. Swanson had introduced them in 1954, but it was during the 60s that they truly took off. Families saw them as modern, convenient, and even futuristic, complete meals in a little aluminum tray that could be heated in the oven in about 25 minutes. A typical TV dinner included a main course like fried chicken or Salisbury steak, a vegetable, and a dessert, all neatly separated in compartments. People genuinely thought they tasted good, and having a freezer stocked with them was a sign of embracing modern, space-age convenience. Families would often eat TV dinners on folding tray tables in front of the television, a major shift from traditional dinners at the dining room table. Some worried this change was undermining family values, but it caught on quickly. Throughout the 60s, the variety of TV dinners expanded, including turkey dinners, Mexican-inspired meals, and even breakfast versions, though those never became as popular. By the late 60s, Swanson was selling over 25 million TV dinners a year. Portions were small by today's standards, and the food could be bland or soggy, but convenience mattered more than culinary perfection. TV dinners marked a turning point in American dining, showing that convenience and modernity were reshaping family meals forever. Cigarettes everywhere. If you could travel back to 1960s, America, one of the most shocking things you'd notice is just how everywhere people smoked. Restaurants, grocery stores, hospitals, even airplanes were filled with cigarette smoke. Flight attendants would walk down aisles offering free cigarettes, and nobody batted an eye. Doctors and nurses smoked at their desks or in patient rooms. Pregnant women smoked openly, and teachers puffed away in lounges and sometimes classrooms. Most households had ashtrays scattered everywhere: living rooms, kitchens, bedrooms, even bathrooms. Guests were offered cigarettes the same way they were offered coffee or tea. Cigarette advertising made smoking seem glamorous and healthy, featuring doctors, athletes, and even Santa Claus. Cars came with ashtrays in both front and back seats, and smoke-free vehicles would have seemed absurd. Office buildings tried to separate smokers and non-smokers, but everyone ended up inhaling the haze anyway. Meetings were conducted in rooms thick with smoke. Cigarette vending machines were everywhere, often accessible to kids, and packs cost about 30 cents. Age restrictions weren't enforced seriously. The idea that smoking could be banned in public would have seemed like government overreach. In the 60s, smoking wasn't just common, it was woven into the very fabric of daily life. The phone booth culture. In the 1960s, phone booths were everywhere and shaped a culture that's almost unimaginable today. Glass or metal enclosed booths lined street corners, gas stations, office lobbies, and highway rest stops. If you needed to make a call while out, a phone booth was your only option. Calls cost a dime. You'd drop in your coin, wait for the dial tone, and make your call. Run out of time, and the operator would interrupt, asking for more money. Some booths had doors for privacy, though passersby could often see and hear your conversation. Superman made phone booths famous as quick change spots, but in real life, they also offered shelter from bad weather or a rare moment of public privacy. Teens used booths to call home, friends made plans, and students in college relied on them before dorm phones became common. An unwritten etiquette existed. Don't hog the phone and try not to eavesdrop, though it was nearly impossible not to overhear someone. Phone companies maintained the booths meticulously, fixing receivers, ensuring coin mechanisms worked, and providing chained phone books. By the late 1960s, there were over 2 million phone booths across America. Today, they've nearly vanished, replaced by cell phones. But back then, these booths were an essential part of daily life, connecting people in ways that seem almost quaint now. Green stamps. Changed shopping. S&H. Green stamps were one of the quirkiest and most beloved aspects of shopping in the 1960s. If you didn't experience them, it's hard to explain just how seriously people took collecting these little rewards. Here's how it worked. When you bought groceries, gas, or other goods at participating stores, you received sheets of green stamps based on your spending. You took them home, licked them, and carefully pasted them into special collector books. Once enough books were filled, they could be redeemed for prizes at S&H redemption centers, stores where nothing cost money, only stamps. You could get anything from kitchen appliances and furniture to toys and electronics. Families often saved stamps for months or even years to earn something special. Kids helped paste stamps into books, and Saturday nights might be spent filling page after page together. Stores used stamps to encourage loyalty. Shoppers often chose one grocery store over another based on stamp rewards, and gas stations ran double stamp days to draw crowds. At their peak, S&H printed more stamps than the U.S. Post Office, 3 times as many in fact. There were even black markets where people bought and sold stamps to get their prizes faster. Though it seems inefficient now, the thrill of collecting and redeeming S&H green stamps made shopping feel rewarding and created a culture of excitement and family teamwork around everyday purchases. Cars had no seatbelts. One of the most shocking things about cars in the early 1960s is that most didn't even have seatbelts, and if they did, they were rarely used. Seatbelts weren't required until 1968, and even then, only lap belts in the front seats were mandated. Mandatory seatbelt laws for all passengers came much later. Before belts were standard, families piled into cars with kids bouncing in the back, sitting on laps, standing between the front seats, or even riding in the cargo area of station wagons. Parents didn't think twice about it. Many people argued seatbelts were unnecessary or even dangerous, claiming they'd rather be thrown clear in a crash than trapped inside a burning car. Automakers often avoided including seatbelts, worried that promoting safety would make cars seem dangerous and increase costs. Those who did have belts often tucked them out of sight to avoid using them. Seatbelts were uncomfortable, restrictive, and many viewed them as government overreach. Even though race car drivers had worn belts for years, everyday drivers didn't see the relevance. When seatbelt laws started appearing, there was fierce resistance, with complaints about personal freedom and government intrusion. Today, driving without a seatbelt is unimaginable, but in the early 1960s, it was perfectly normal and frighteningly common to cruise down the highway completely unrestrained. Tang was space age. Tang, the bright orange breakfast drink, became a cultural phenomenon in the 1960s thanks to NASA. Introduced by General Foods in 1959, Tang didn't gain widespread popularity until 1962, when astronaut John Glenn took it into orbit. Suddenly, Tang wasn't just a powdered drink. It was space-age technology you could enjoy at home. Marketing practically wrote itself. Drink what the astronauts drink. Kids across America begged their parents for Tang, hoping to emulate their space hero idols. It came in a jar as an orange powder to be mixed with water. While it didn't taste much like real orange juice, the futuristic association outweighed flavor. Mothers appreciated the added vitamins, and children were drawn to its bright color and sweet taste. By the mid-1960s, Tang was in millions of American homes. Schools served it at lunch, grocery stores displayed it prominently, and kids drank it by the gallon. Its connection to space exploration made it feel modern, exciting, and futuristic, even if it was essentially flavored sugar water. Tang remained a popular household staple through the 1970s, though eventually other drinks replaced it. For those who grew up during the 1960s, Tang isn't just a drink, it's a nostalgic taste of the space age, a reminder of an era when the future seemed bright, orange, and full of possibility. Milk was delivered to your door. In the 1960s, buying milk was often a home delivery experience rather than a grocery store chore. Milkmen would arrive early in the morning, driving trucks stocked with glass bottles of milk, quietly leaving fresh bottles on porches or in insulated boxes and collecting empties from the previous delivery. Families left notes specifying their needs, perhaps 3 bottles of whole milk, a bottle of chocolate milk, or a pint of cream. And the milkman would deliver exactly what was requested. The milk came in glass bottles with paper caps or metal lids. In cold weather, cream could rise and sometimes freeze, pushing the cap upward. Delivery ensured freshness, as the milk arrived just hours from the dairy. Some routes included eggs, butter, cheese, or bread, making it a personalized service. Children often woke early to catch a glimpse of the milkman, sometimes even riding along briefly. Home delivery declined in the late 1960s as supermarkets became more convenient and refrigerators grew larger, allowing families to store more milk at once. By the 1970s, doorstep milk delivery was becoming rare, eventually fading almost entirely. Today, it's a nostalgic reminder of a slower-paced era when service was personal and the milkman was a familiar part of everyday life. Everyone had an encyclopedia set. In the 1960s, if you wanted to look something up, there was no Google. You had to rely on massive leather-bound encyclopedia sets like Encyclopedia Britannica or World Book Encyclopedia. These multi-volume sets, often 20 or more books, were expensive, sometimes costing hundreds of dollars. but families bought them because education was highly valued. Owning a complete set signaled that your household prized knowledge. Encyclopedia salesmen frequently went door to door, offering payment plans and promising academic success for children whose families purchased a set. Kids used the volumes for school reports, flipping to the right letter to find information which they copied or paraphrased for assignments. Yearly update books were sent to keep sets current, though many families didn't fully integrate them. Beyond homework, encyclopedias were a source of curiosity. A child might start reading about dolphins and end up learning about Denmark or disease. These books were the ultimate reference tools in a pre-digital world, connecting families to a wealth of knowledge. By the 1980s, CD-ROM encyclopedias emerged, and by the 2000s, the internet rendered physical sets mostly obsolete. But in the 1960s, an encyclopedia collection was as essential as a computer today, the go-to source for information and learning. Gas wars were real. Gas stations in the 1960s would actually compete for customers by dropping their prices lower and lower, creating what people called gas wars. And drivers loved it. You'd be driving down the street and see one station advertising gas for 30 cents a gallon. Then another station across the street would drop their price to 28 cents. Then the first station would go down to 26 cents. This would continue until someone gave up. Gas wars could last for days or even weeks, with stations constantly updating their prices on big signs. Out front, drivers would cruise around, looking for the best deal, and stations would sometimes drop prices to near cost, just to get customers. What made this possible was that gas was cheap. To begin with, a gallon of gas in the early 60s cost around 30 cents, which is about $3 today when adjusted for inflation. Stations could afford to compete on price because their margins were decent. Gas stations also offered much better service than they do today. They were called service stations for a reason. Attendants would pump your gas, check your oil, clean your windshield, and check your tire pressure, all as part of the normal service. Some stations gave out free glassware or dishware with a fill-up. You could collect an entire set of drinking glasses or plates just by buying gas stations. Also gave out trading stamps like green stamps to encourage customer loyalty. Finding the cheapest gas became a sport. For some drivers, they'd keep track of which stations had the best prices and time, their fill-ups accordingly. Some people would drive miles out of their way to save a penny or two per gallon. The oil crisis of the 1970s ended gas wars, when shortages made price competition impossible. Stations started charging whatever they wanted because customers didn't have choices anymore. But in the 60s, gas wars made driving more affordable and gave customers real power to shop around for the best deal. It was a completely different relationship between drivers and gas stations. TV had only a few channels. Kids today, with their hundreds of streaming options and endless content, would find 1960s television absolutely shocking because you had basically 3 channels: ABC, NBC, and CBS, plus maybe a local PBS station. If you were lucky, that was it. 3 networks controlled everything Americans watched on television. And if you didn't like what was on, well, too bad. You either watched something else or turned off the TV. There was no DVR, no pause button, no rewind. If you missed your favorite show, you missed it, period. Your only hope was that it might be repeated during summer. Rerun shows would air once, and if you weren't home to watch it, you'd have to wait months to possibly see it again, to change channels. You had to get up and walk to the TV to turn a dial. There were no remote controls for most people, so whoever was sitting closest to the TV became the designated channel changer. The broadcast day didn't even last 24 hours. Stations would sign off around midnight or 1 a.m., playing the national anthem before cutting to a test pattern screen. If you were up late, there was literally nothing to watch. Saturday morning was for cartoons, and kids would wake up early to pour a big bowl of sugary cereal and watch hours of animated shows. This was appointment television. You couldn't watch cartoons any other time, so Saturday morning was special. Families would plan their schedules around their favorite shows. If Bonanza was on at 9 p.m. on Sunday, that's when you watched it. Everyone watched the same shows at the same time and talked about them the next day at work or school. There was something communal about this limited choice when a special program aired like the moon landing or a Beatles performance. A huge percentage of Americans watched it together, creating shared cultural moments. Today, we have unlimited options, but we've lost that shared experience. Nobody watches the same thing anymore because there's too much choice. The limited television of the 60s actually brought people together. Kids rode in station wagons, unsecured. The family station wagon was the minivan of the 1960s, except it was way more dangerous for kids riding in the back. Station wagons had a rear-facing seat in the cargo area where kids would sit, looking out the back window. This seat had no seatbelts, no restraints, and no real protection. If the car got hit from behind, kids loved these seats because they felt like they were in their own little world. Back there, parents would fold down the back seats, creating a large flat area where kids could play. Parents thought nothing of letting children roll around unsecured in the back while the car was moving at highway speeds on long road trips. Kids would bring blankets and pillows and basically camp out in the back of the station wagon. They'd play games, sleep read comics, and generally treat the moving vehicle like a playroom. Siblings would fight over who got to sit in the way back seat because it was considered the fun spot. Some station wagons had wood paneling on the sides, giving them a distinctive look that's now associated with family road trips and 60s nostalgia. These wood grain panels were fake, of course just vinyl stickers, but they were incredibly popular. Nobody thought twice about safety. Parents figured that. As long as kids weren't hanging out, the windows, everything was fine. The idea that kids could be seriously injured in a minor accident didn't really register when the car stopped. Suddenly, kids would go flying forward, crashing into the back of the front seats or into each other. This happened all the time, and parents would just yell at kids to hold on better next time. Some families would take the seats out entirely, creating even more space for kids to roll around. Tailgating at football games meant opening up the back and sitting on the bumper with nothing preventing kids from falling out. Looking back, it's amazing that more kids weren't seriously hurt. The family station wagon was basically a rolling hazard, but it holds a special place in the memories of anyone who grew up in the 60s. Jell-O was a dinner food. One of the strangest food trends of the 1960s was serving Jell-O as part of dinner, not as dessert, but as an actual side dish alongside meat and vegetables. Women's magazines and cookbooks were filled with recipes for savory. Jell-O molds containing vegetables, meat, seafood, and other ingredients that absolutely should not be suspended in flavored gelatin, but somehow were. You might be served a ring of lime Jell-O with cottage cheese and shredded carrots inside, or a tomato aspic with celery and onions. These dishes were considered elegant and appropriate for dinner parties. The most infamous was probably the tuna Jell-O pie, which was exactly what it sounds like. Canned tuna mixed with lemon. Jell-O. And served as a main course. People actually ate this, and served it to guests without irony. Hostesses would spend hours creating elaborate layered Jell-O, molds with different colors and flavors, creating rainbow effects or striped patterns. The more complicated the mold, the more impressive it was supposed to be. Jell-O salads were everywhere, at potlucks, church dinners, and holiday meals. Every family had their own special recipe, usually involving some combination of Jell-O, canned fruit mini marshmallows, and Cool Whip. The popularity of Jell-O molds came partly from the fact that they could be made ahead of time, and they looked fancy on the table. A perfectly molded Jell-O creation implied that the hostess had skill and taste. Refrigerators in the 60s were becoming more common and more reliable, making it easier to create these chilled dishes. Jell-O represented modern cooking, using convenient prepared foods rather than cooking everything from scratch. What's really strange is that people genuinely seem to enjoy these dishes, or at least they claimed a recipe. Books show that savory Jell-O was recommended by respected cooks and food writers, not just by amateurs experimenting in their kitchens. By the 1970s, savory Jell-O started falling out of favor, today serving tuna in lime. Jell-O would get you laughed out of any dinner party, but in the 60s it was considered perfectly normal and even sophisticated. S&H green stamps at the grocery store going to the grocery store in the 1960s meant you'd get S and H green stamps with your purchase, and collecting these stamps was serious business. For millions of American families, the checkout clerk would calculate how many stamps you earned based on your purchase amount, then tear off sheets of stamps from a large pad and hand them to you along with your groceries. Some stores gave 1 stamp for every 10 cents you spent. Families would accumulate huge stacks of stamp sheets, then spend evenings licking and sticking them into collector books. It was a family activity with everyone helping to fill the books. Each book held 1,200 stamps. Once you had enough books, you'd take them to an S&H redemption center, which was like a catalog store where everything was purchased with stamps. Instead of money, you could flip through catalogs at home, deciding what to save up for. The stamps created loyalty to specific stores. People would drive past closer grocery stores to shop at the one that gave out green stamps. Station owners competed on how many stamps they offered with double stamp days, creating long lines. Kids would get excited when the family had enough books to redeem for something special, maybe a new bike or a camping tent. Walking into the redemption center felt like going to a special store where you were rich because of all your saved stamps. The Green Stamp program was essentially a customer loyalty rewards program, but the physical act of collecting and pasting stamps made it feel more substantial than today's digital points systems. Today, loyalty programs are automatic, but they lack the tangible satisfaction of filling book after book with stamps. Cars had ashtrays in the back seat. Every car manufactured in the 1960s came equipped with ashtrays, not just in the front seat, but in the back seat too. Because of course your rear passengers would want to smoke. These weren't small ashtrays either. They were substantial, built-in receptacles with spring-loaded covers that would pop open when you pushed them. You could fill them with cigarette butts and ashes, and the car would just smell like smoke all the time. Cars also had cigarette lighters in both the front and sometimes the back. These little coil heaters would pop out when they were hot, ready to light your cigarette. Having multiple lighters meant passengers didn't have to share or wait. The idea of a smoke-free car would have seemed ridiculous to most people in the 60s. Smoking while driving was completely normal, and drivers would light up without thinking twice about it. Families would take long road trips with both parents smoking in the front seat and kids in the back. Breathing in all the secondhand smoke, windows might be cracked open slightly, but the car would still be filled with smoke. Car ashtrays would fill up quickly, especially on long trips, and people would just empty them out. The window or into a trash can, littering cigarette butts along highways was common, and nobody thought much about it. Some luxury cars had even fancier ashtrays with chrome finishes or special designs. The quality of a car's ashtray was actually mentioned in advertisements and reviews. When smoking in cars finally started declining in the 1980s and 90s, automakers continued including ashtrays for years out of habit. Today, most cars don't have ashtrays at all, a huge change from the 60s. Doctors recommended cigarettes. One of the most shocking aspects of 1960s. America was that doctors not only smoked themselves, but actually appeared in cigarette advertisements recommending specific brands to their patients. Tobacco companies paid doctors to endorse their products, and advertisements would feature men in white coats with stethoscopes, recommending brands like Camel or Lucky Strike. These ads would claim that more doctors smoked Camels than any other cigarette. The medical community was slow to acknowledge the connection between smoking and lung cancer. Even though research was mounting throughout the 60s, many doctors continued to smoke and saw nothing wrong. With their patients smoking, pregnant women would ask their doctors if they should quit smoking, and many doctors would tell them that smoking was fine, or even that it might help with stress. There was genuine debate in the medical community about whether smoking was actually harmful. Some doctors recommended specific brands as being easier on your throat or less irritating to your lungs. The idea that filtering or mentholating cigarettes made them safer was widely promoted. Hospitals allowed smoking in patient rooms, and doctors would smoke while making their rounds. Nurses would smoke at the nurses' station, and nobody thought twice about lighting up in a medical facility. The Surgeon General's report in 1964, which definitively linked smoking to lung cancer, was a turning point. But even after that, many doctors continued to smoke, and cultural attitudes changed. Slowly, cigarette companies fought back hard against the science funding, their own contradictory research, and creating doubt about the health effects. Their advertising continued to feature medical imagery, even as evidence mounted by the late 60s. Medical opinion was finally shifting, and fewer doctors were willing to appear in cigarette ads. But the damage was done. Millions of Americans had been encouraged to smoke by the very people who were supposed to keep them healthy. Looking back, it seems insane that doctors recommended cigarettes. But in the context of the 60s, when smoking was ubiquitous and profits were enormous, it made a certain terrible kind of sense. The Sears catalog. Was everything before Amazon, before online shopping, before even shopping malls? In many areas, there was the Sears catalog, and it was basically the internet of the 1960s. This massive book would arrive at your house twice a year, and it contained everything a family might need: clothes, tools, appliances, furniture, toys, and even houses. Yes, you could order an entire house from Sears that would be shipped to you in pieces. Families would gather around the catalog, especially when the Christmas edition arrived, and kids would spend hours flipping through the toy section, circling everything they wanted. They'd make lists and prioritize items, hoping Santa might bring their favorites. The catalog was particularly important for rural families who lived far from department stores. For them, the Sears catalog was their primary shopping resource. They'd place orders by mail or phone and wait weeks for items to arrive. Women would use the catalog to shop for clothes, studying the pages carefully and imagining how items might look. Men would order tools and hardware. Farmers would order equipment. Entire wardrobes could be purchased without ever setting foot in a store. The catalog created a standardized idea of American life. People in small towns in Montana were looking at the same products as people in suburbs of New York. Sears decided what was fashionable, what was necessary, and what Americans should want. Placing an order was an event you'd carefully fill out. The order form listing item numbers, sizes, and colors, then mail it with a check or money order. Then you'd wait anxiously for your package to arrive, which could take several weeks. When your order finally arrived, it was like Christmas, even if you'd ordered it yourself. There was excitement in opening the box and seeing if the items looked like they did in the catalog. The Sears catalog was more than a shopping tool. It was entertainment, education, and a window into modern American consumer culture. For millions of families, it represented abundance and possibility. Today we take instant online shopping for granted, but the Sears catalog served the same purpose, bringing the marketplace into your home. Party lines were normal. In 1960s, America, many families shared their telephone lines with their neighbors in what was called a party line, and it was as awkward as it sounds. A party line meant that 2 or more households were connected to the same telephone line to save on infrastructure costs. Phone companies would have multiple families share a single line. Each family had their own phone number, but the line itself was shared. When your phone rang, you'd have to pay attention to the ring pattern to know if the call was for you. 2 short rings might be for you, while 1 long ring was for your neighbor. If you picked up during someone else's ring pattern, you'd hear their conversation. And here's where it gets really strange. You could pick up your phone at any time and listen in on your neighbor's conversations. This was technically against the rules, but people did it all the time, leading to all sorts of drama and gossip. Teenagers hated party lines because they couldn't have private conversations with their boyfriends or girlfriends. Nosy neighbors might be listening in, taking notes on every word said. Some people would deliberately eavesdrop, gathering gossip to spread around town. If someone else on your party line was using the phone, you couldn't make calls. You'd pick up the receiver and hear your neighbor talking, and you'd have to hang up and wait until they were done. Some people would hog the line for hours, making everyone else wait. This led to conflicts between neighbors. People would argue about who talked too long or who was monopolizing the line. Families would establish informal rules about evening hours being reserved for certain households. Getting a private line was considered a luxury and status symbol. When you could finally afford your own dedicated telephone line, it felt like a major upgrade party. Lines were cheaper though. So many families stuck with them to save money. By the late 1960s and into the 70s, party lines started disappearing as phone infrastructure improved and costs came down. But for much of the 60s, they were a normal part of life. The lack of privacy seems shocking today when we all have personal cell phones. But in the 60s, you just accepted that your phone conversations might have an audience, and you watched what you said. Accordingly, the 1960s was truly a different world from the one we live in today. The weird facts we've looked at show just how much has changed in 60 years, from nuclear fallout shelters to party line telephones, from cigarettes everywhere to Jell-O, salads. These strange aspects of daily life remind us that what seems normal in one era can seem completely bizarre in another. If you grew up in the 60s, you probably didn't think twice about most of these things. They were just part of everyday life. But looking back through modern eyes, it's clear that the 60s had some truly odd characteristics that shaped an entire generation. These weird facts are more than just curiosities. They tell us about the values, fears, and priorities of 1960s America. And they remind us that our own normal everyday habits might seem just as strange to future generations looking back at our time.